Welcome to Daily with Doc and Becca. This program is for educational purposes only. The statements in this program have not been evaluated by the FDA. The content is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any diseases, nor is it intended to take the place of your primary care physician. Testimonials are shared as individual experiences of the individual sharing their testimony. Results vary and may not be typical. We do not make any claims regarding health or income. As an empowered individual, you do have options available. We are honored to have a founding father of the science of epigenetics guiding us with the best options to obtain or maintain optimal health, Dr. Joel Wallach. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us here on Daily with Doc. And let's go ahead and open up that waiting room. Let people in as yes, this is a live show. And if you would like to join us live, we are here Wednesday, Thursday, Friday from 12 to 1 p.m. Pacific time, 1 to 2 Mountain, 2 to 3 Central, and 3 to 4 here in Eastern time. You can join us by going to zoom.dailywithdoc.com. Again, that's zoom.dailywithdoc.com. So welcome, everybody. For those of you who are here live with me in the Zoom, please make sure that you have that chat open, as there's a lot of information that's going to be transcribed and put into that chat for your reading pleasure. And also, if you see something that really strikes your interest, take a screenshot or use your phone and take a picture of it and make sure that you take it back to the person that shared this program with you. Now, this program is being sponsored by dailywithdoc.com. Well, you will find there on the website a good foods, bad foods list, because we always have people asking, well, what should I eat? We're going to give you some ideas on what not to eat and what to increase in your diet. You're also going to have more information in the way of previous programming and articles to help you be more empowered in making decisions to help you create a better health journey. So like I said, if somebody invited you, make sure that you get back with them. If there's no one to thank, we do have a call team of certified holistic health coaches here to help those who have never placed an order of any of the products that are going to be mentioned on this program today. That call number is 855-949-3377. Again, 855-949-3377. Or if you're like me and you're a do-it-yourselfer and you just want to jump right in, you can go to dailywithdoc.com. We have a store there in addition to the good foods, bad foods list, and also a what do I take? There's a spot on the website also that if you're not working with anybody, and I can't emphasize that enough, that you can schedule a 15-minute consultation. Now, we have a special guest today, and at the end, if we have time, we are going to be taking some questions in regards to what we have as our topic. But first, let me introduce you to, because I am so thrilled to welcome Dr. Joanne Conaway to our show today. She is a retired lieutenant colonel, a registered nurse, a doctor of traditional naturopathy. Dr. Conaway brings over 40 years of distinguished experience exploring the intricate connection between nutrition and health. Her expertise, honed in diverse medical settings and the military, positions her as a leading voice in natural wellness. Dr. Conaway has dedicated her career to understanding the body as a whole, with a particular focus on the gut's profound impact on immunity, hormonal balance, and overall well-being. She is passionate about empowering people to improve their health through natural means. So get ready to learn from a true pioneer, as we are excited to have her share her wisdom with us today. Dr. Joanne Conaway, thank you so much for being here with us on Daily with Doc, as being the doc of the day. How are you today?
Very well. Thank you so much. And thank you for having me back. This is great. I thoroughly enjoyed my first go, and I am really excited to be back with you today and share a little bit more of the information. As you pointed out, I have focused for so long on nutrition and how the body uses nutrition. And I know that for many people, you know my story. You know that I became involved in this entire field back in the late 1970s, early 80s, when I was taking care of people in the hospital setting who could no longer eat by mouth. And, during that time, we knew everyone needed carbohydrates and proteins. We quickly learned that the body has a basic need for essential fatty acids. We had to give intravenous essential fatty acid formulations that wouldn't cause embolism. But more specifically to the message that we talk about all the time, we also learned that the body has a basic need for minerals and trace minerals. Many of those things that we were fully aware of because of what we saw on the periodic table in the classroom, we did not realize were so necessary to the human body. And so, like I said, back in the late 1970s, early 80s is when I was actually doing all this work in the hospital setting. And so fast forward to the late 90s, and I hear a copy of Dead Doctors Don't Lie and became very excited because everything he was saying about minerals and trace minerals and the manifestations of the deficiencies were all things that I was aware of. And so I immediately got excited, immediately got on board with Doc. And actually, I tell the story that when I first got on board, it was actually with a company that was not Doc's company. And it was because a company had pirated Doc's tape. And listening to the information, I knew his message was right on, but I was taking products that were from a different company. So my husband said to me one day, we're about 8 months into this, and he says, "Are you seeing any difference?" And I said, "No, I can't say that I'm seeing a lot of difference, but I'm not going to stop taking these products. I know how powerful they are." Well, about, I'm going to say 2 weeks after that, he got an email blast talking about Dr. Wallach's own 100% plant-derived colloidal minerals. And he said, "Will you look into this for me? I thought we were taking Doc's minerals." And so I looked into it, and lo and behold, we had been taking minerals from a company that had pirated Doc's tape. They were not Doc's minerals. We started taking Doc's minerals, and within just a couple of weeks, started to see pretty significant changes. So, people will often say to me, if you could only pick one product in the line of products, what would it be? For me, that one product would be our minerals. I am so certain that we are all minerally deficient, and so certain that that mineral product is probably, in my opinion, the most important product that we have in the line. And once again, we have good vitamin mineral products. We have all kinds of products. But that particular product, if I could only pick one, it would be our mineral product. So because of the research and because of the enthusiasm that Doc has always had for this message, I was driven to make the decision to retire from nursing early, go back to school, and become a naturopathic physician. And so happy for having done that, mostly because I am now able to, in my opinion, help many, many more people than I was ever able to help in the hospital setting. However, given that opportunity, I do have the unique perspective of having been in the conventional medicine world for over 40 years and now being in the all natural world. And so I can look at a condition and a circumstance and a situation and understand it from the perspective of conventional medicine, but understand what we need to do from the standpoint of all natural medicine. And so for me, it's been a joy to do that evolution and to actually convert from that conventional medicine world to the all natural medicine world. So I am always thrilled to be able to share some of the information that I've learned along the way. You know, I have had since school, I've had the opportunity to take a lot of additional courses, and I am just wanting to share what I know will keep people healthy, wanting to share those things that must be avoided and wanting to share those things that must be included. And so today, what I'm going to share with you is.
Well, I was going to have the question of the day.
Oh, okay.
Well, and the question of the day, because you do have all this experience, you know the value of nutrition, you know the value of minerals, and you also know the damage that happens when you're not putting the right stuff in. So the question is our food killing us?
Okay. And so that is the title of my talk today. Is your food killing you? So I'm going to go ahead and start to share my slides. And I think it's important because one of the things that we know is our food supply, and we're learning more about this all the time, thank goodness, okay? But one of the things that we know is our food supply is simply just not healthy, literally just not healthy. So is your food killing you? In my opinion, the answer is yes. And today, I'm going to start the discussion talking primarily about sugar. And it's because, well, as I go through the presentation, you'll figure out why I've selected sugar, okay? It's in everything. And so much of what we have on our store shelves, so much of what we have that we don't even consider is loaded with sugar. Unless you're eating all whole foods that are organic, that are never out of a box or a package or a freezer or a can, unless that's your diet, you're eating prepackaged processed foods. So let's talk just a minute about sugar. And like I said, my focus today is going to be sugar. So when we look at sugar and we look at the history of sugar consumption, it's fascinating to recognize that around 1700, the average person consumed approximately 4.9 grams of sugar every day, or the equivalent of 4 pounds a year. By 1800, that was up to 18 pounds a year. By 1900, up to 90 pounds a year. And around 2009, 50% of Americans actually were known to consume approximately a half a pound of sugar a day, or 180 pounds a year. Now, the problem with this is sugar's not healthy to start with, but when we start talking about that consumption of sugar and how much sugar that actually means or actually is, the sad reality is people don't know that these sugars are in the foods that they're eating. So much so that the average person now consumes about 70 grams of fructose each day. That's 300% above the recommended amount. And that's because there is so much fructose in those foods that are prepackaged and processed. The other thing that has become recognized is the fact that sugar acts like a drug in the body. It affects the same brain chemicals as heroin and morphine. So when people say, oh, I'm addicted to sugar, I've got to have sugar, part of the reason is because of the true chemical impact of sugar in the body, the chemical impact of sugar on the brain. It does affect those brain chemicals. And in much the same way as heroin or morphine, and as we all know, heroin and morphine can be very addictive. So sugar can also be very addictive. So, some of the reasons sugar is unhealthy, there are many, okay? We know that sugar consumption can cause weight gain, no two ways about it. But we also know that there can be a significant increase in the risk of heart disease, type 2 diabetes, kidney disease, an increase in the risk of cancer, an increase in the risk of depression, accelerated cognitive decline. When we look at some of the research done around Alzheimer's disease, for example, we know that sugar can be a major contributor, and we know that because we understand that sugar can be a major contributor to inflammation. When we talk about inflammation, what is it about sugar that causes inflammation? Well, depending upon the type of sugar that you're consuming, and we're going to go into that in just a minute, but depending on the type of sugar that you're consuming, that sugar actually will release cytokines. Now, what's a cytokine? Well, a cytokine is something that once it gets into the body, it triggers an immune response. So when we talk about immunity, we have to recognize that, it triggers an inflammatory response. And when we talk about inflammation, we have to recognize that the majority of chronic disease and illness is linked to or associated with inflammation. And sugar is one of the major contributors to chronic inflammation in the body. When we talk about inflammation, inflammation is not always a bad thing. One of the things that we need to understand is inflammation that occurs as a result of acute injury is the body's response to that injury, and it is the body's mechanism for taking care of you because you've sustained that injury. And the example that I will often use when I talk to people is imagine bumping your shin. If you bump your shin, that's an acute injury, okay? And the reason I use bumping your shin, most of us have had the opportunity to at least once in our lives bump our shin. So when we bump our shin, what happens? Well, there's initially pain, there's inflammation, okay? And that inflammation is happening as a result of white blood cells flooding the area. The body is responding to that damage, to that injury. You will have that inflammation that will be easily seen and recognized. You may have some redness in the area. It may be warm to touch. All these things indicate that your body is doing what it's supposed to do to address the acute injury and acute inflammation. Now, I want you to think about that same type of injury, but now instead of bumping your shin, think about that injury at the cellular level. And basically, this is what is happening, and this is what is creating that chronic inflammation in the body. When we talk about injury at the cellular level, it's the same type of thing, but in the case of sugar consumption or some of the other things that are unhealthy foods, it's happening chronically. It's happening daily, on and on and on, unrelenting. And this is where we are finding that so many people are having such an issue with these chronic diseases. Sugar is unhealthy because it accelerates the skin aging process. It increases cellular aging. Oftentimes people will say, well, what does sugar have to do with my skin? If we think about that inflammatory process related to sugar and think about the cells in the skin, we can see that there's a significant relationship. Not everybody thinks about the fact that if I drink a soft drink, it's going to impact my skin. But the truth of the matter is, yes, it will. Sugar can also lead to fatty liver. You know, it's interesting because non-alcoholic fatty liver disease has become very prevalent in this country. How does that happen? Well, when we consume large amounts of sugar, it ultimately will be processed in such a way as fat is actually increased in the liver. And so this leads to fatty liver disease. And we can liken it to things like the basic understanding of foie gras, for example. If you have foie gras as a delicacy, what are you eating? You're eating a liver that is a fatty liver from a duck or a goose. That's what foie gras is. how did that liver get so fatty? Because in nature, these animals aren't going to have fatty livers. How does that liver get so fatty? That liver gets fatty because these animals are fed an overconsumption of carbohydrates. And so that overconsumption of carbohydrates and sugars lead to fatty liver in these animals. And therefore, we have the delicacy called foie gras. There's significant impact in dental health. When we look at sugar and sugar consumption as a whole, we've always known that sugar is not healthy for the mouth because sugar causes cavities. But what we now also realize is there's a significant impact with respect to, again, sugar causing inflammation, that inflammation in the gingival tissue, ultimately leading to a breaking down of the gingival tissue, ultimately leading to periodontitis and all kinds of issues and problems related to that. Also, an increase in the risk of developing gout. This is something that the research is showing us more clearly each and every day. Many people suffer from gout, and many people are on certain medications to help to treat their gout symptoms, when what they need to do is clean up their diet and get rid of the sugar in their diet. So, some sugar basics. When we talk about sugar, people say sugar is sugar is sugar. That is not true. It is not true for several different reasons, but I think that it behooves us to understand the basic sugars and what those sugars do in the human body. So when we talk about sugar basics, we talk about monosaccharides. Monosaccharides, a single molecule of sugar. So our glucose, our fructose, our galactose, those are all simple sugars. Those are all monosaccharides. Disaccharides are double sugars. When we talk about a disaccharide, we're talking about two different molecules of sugar. And with respect to sucrose, for example, which is a disaccharide, that's the table sugar. That's the thing that we normally see in the sugar bowl. That is a molecule of glucose attached to a molecule of fructose. Lactose is milk sugar. That's a molecule of glucose attached to a molecule of galactose. Maltose, which is malt sugar, is a molecule of glucose bound to another molecule of glucose. So those are disaccharides or double sugars. And then we have polysaccharides. Polysaccharides are complex sugars, many monosaccharides. Polysaccharides are those sugars that we find in plant foods, vegetables, and fruits. Those are polysaccharides. So when we talk about sugars and carbohydrates, we recognize that carbohydrates are actually branches of sugar. Now, simple carbohydrates are the carbohydrates that we find in white foods, refined foods, and they cause a rapid blood sugar increase. And then we have complex carbohydrates. Complex carbohydrates are the carbohydrates that we find in vegetables. Now, the thing to remember here is our vegetables are packed with fiber, vitamins, minerals. They play an important role in our overall health because of the way they are processed in the body. So let's look at glucose and fructose for just a minute, because sometimes people say, once again, sugar is sugar is sugar, and it's not true. They are different forms. Now, glucose is the most basic form of sugar. It is required by all cells in the body for energy. Glucose is the only form in which sugar can be transported directly into the bloodstream. All other sugars or carbohydrates must first be broken down in the digestive system. Fructose is absorbed by the liver first, and this is where it is converted to energy. So fat or glucose from fructose is actually happening as a result of a conversion in the liver before it can be used by other organs. Fructose is not absorbed directly into the bloodstream. So many people say fructose is fruit sugar. Well, yes, that's true, and we'll talk more about that in just a minute. But fructose is not absorbed directly into the bloodstream. Fructose is first absorbed by the liver, and then it is converted in the liver. Now let's talk just a minute about fructose versus high fructose corn syrup, because this has been something that is a topic of considerable debate for many, many years. The Corn Growers Association would like you to think that the high fructose corn syrup from corn is no different and processed no differently in the body than fructose from fruit. And this is what they stress, that there is really no difference in how the body uses high fructose corn syrup versus fructose. That is so not true. So fructose, fruit sugar, when we look at fructose, again, most people know that fructose is fruit sugar, but is it a whole food source of fruit, or is it processed sugar, as in high fructose corn syrup? In order to come up with high fructose corn syrup, there's an entire processing that takes place. This processing requires all this heavy duty equipment, all these chemicals, all these additives to actually create high fructose corn syrup. So are there dangers with respect to high fructose corn syrup? Many, okay? Not the least of which are things like the chemical additives and things like mercury. Although the mercury is removed in the high fructose corn syrup process, not all of it is gone. So if you're consuming high fructose corn syrup, chances are real good you're getting mercury as well, and some other chemicals. So fructose that is in fruit is actually mixed with vitamins, minerals, enzymes, fiber, beneficial phytonutrients, we call them. We often refer to fruit sugar as the poison packaged with the antidote. And what that means is your body is going to use the fructose or the sugar in fruit in a much different way than your body will use high fructose corn syrup. The fiber in the fruit actually slows the absorption of the fructose. It lessens the release into the circulation through the gut, and it allows the body to process it at a more reasonable and natural rate. Liquid or crystalline fructose, high fructose corn syrup, can actually raise insulin levels, increase fat accumulation, increase cancer risk, lead to fatty liver, lead to diabetes, lead to high blood pressure, heart disease, leaky gut, and the list goes on and on and on. Now, why is high fructose corn syrup so different? And why is it something that impacts us in such a negative way? It is because of what high fructose corn syrup does when you consume it. The first thing that happens when you consume high fructose corn syrup is the body does not recognize high fructose corn syrup as a carbohydrate source. So it stores it immediately as fat. Again, if you're consuming fructose, it goes to the liver, it's converted to energy, the body recognizes it as a carbohydrate and uses it appropriately. But high fructose corn syrup is not recognized by the body in the same way. And so the body doesn't know what to do with it and begins to store it immediately as fat. The other thing that happens when you consume high fructose corn syrup is it literally stands in the way of the normal pathway whereby sugar is driven into the cell by insulin. So if you're consuming high fructose corn syrup, that normal pathway whereby, again, sugar would be entering the cell because of insulin doing the job that it does to open the door of the cell, high fructose corn syrup stands in the way of that pathway. So what does that mean to me? Let's say I go to a restaurant and I go to the salad bar and I'm going to get some nice fresh fruits and vegetables, probably not organic. I prefer the organic, but I'm in a restaurant, I'm at a salad bar, okay? But along with those fruits and vegetables, I make the decision that I'm going to pick up one of those delectable looking rolls. Now, we all know they have gluten, so that should discount our need for that roll. But in addition to that, the majority of your breads and rolls and crackers and things that you're going to find in any restaurant situation, along with having gluten, are also going to have high fructose corn syrup in them as the sweetener. So now, when I'm consuming my salad and I'm using that bread to help me shovel the salad onto my fork, and I'm taking a bite of that bread, that high fructose corn syrup in that bread is going to stand in the way of any of the healthy sugars in the fruits and vegetables getting into my cells the way they normally would. So all processed sugars have the potential to cause harm. So what are some foods? Now, these are common foods, certainly not an extensive list, but common foods that have high fructose corn syrup in them that you might not expect. Many yogurt brands are sweetened with high fructose corn syrup. Unless you find a brand of yogurt that has pure cane sugar in it, chances are real good that you're consuming a yogurt that has high fructose corn syrup in it. As I said, most bread and bread products, your crackers, any cookies, anything like that, they're going to have high fructose corn syrup unless they say no high fructose corn syrup. Frozen pizzas. We don't think so much about sugar when we think about pizza. However, frozen pizzas have high fructose corn syrup in them. Cereal bars. Many people think cereal bars are like the greatest thing. Okay. I can eat a cereal bar with it, drink a cup of coffee, and I can go for a couple of hours. I don't have to worry about the fact that I didn't get a chance to eat breakfast. But what are you consuming in that cereal bar? If you are consuming the majority of cereal bars out there, they have high fructose corn syrup in them. Cocktail peanuts. A lot of people don't think about sugar in peanuts, but when we talk about cocktail peanuts, to flavor them, they add a sweetener, and the sweetener is high fructose corn syrup. Boxed macaroni and cheese. Not everybody thinks about sugar in boxed macaroni and cheese, but it's there. Salad dressings. Many salad dressings on the market. You pick up the salad dressing, you turn it around, you look at the label, and the very first ingredient is high fructose corn syrup. Tonic. The majority of tonic, a lot of people think, oh, tonic's not sweet. Tonic isn't sweetened with anything. Well, don't be so sure, okay? Check the label because chances are real good. First of all, you don't want the carbonation, but you also don't want the high fructose corn syrup. Applesauce and canned fruit. Now, from my perspective, I think applesauce and canned fruit, really? Why? Don't those things have enough natural sugar that you don't need to sweeten them with high fructose corn syrup? You'd like to think that that's true, but it's not. Many fruits that are on the market, many things, and especially dried fruits, they are concentrated sugar. Dried fruits are concentrated sugar, but in addition, oftentimes they'll sweeten them with high fructose corn syrup. So most prepackaged and processed foods contain high fructose corn syrup. So what's the easiest way to get high fructose corn syrup out of your diet? Stop eating prepackaged and processed foods. Again, the majority of processed foods that are in your diet have high fructose corn syrup. So let's talk a little bit about what happens when you consume all this sugar, okay? First thing is mineral depletion. The mineral depletion is the effect of refined foods and the consequences of eating sucrose or table sugar, the white stuff. We begin to deplete the minerals in our body. In addition, mineral depletion is in part the aftermath of the refining process of any foods that are out there. So when sugarcane, which comes from a plant, which would normally be okay, is refined and bleached, all the nutrients and the minerals are removed. So unless it's 100% pure cane sugar, chances are real good that what you're consuming is sugar that does not have all of those necessary minerals and cofactors. So refined sugars don't have the fiber, they have no minerals, they have no proteins, no fats, no enzymes. They are simply empty calories. So when we look at refined sugars and processed foods, it's simply eating empty calories. But what's worse than that, and I think that this is the thing that most people need to have a better appreciation of, when we start eating refined sugar, they don't have, once again, they don't have those things to help those sugars be broken down and utilized properly. So now what happens is the body must borrow vital nutrients. The body has to borrow calcium, sodium, potassium, magnesium, thiamine, chromium, zinc, all of those things that are necessary to ensure sugar is utilized in the body appropriately. We have to steal from ourselves. If the fruit, or if the food is whole fruit, if the complex carbohydrate, like fruits and vegetables, is what you're consuming, that's different from refined sugar. And those foods actually have all of these cofactors packaged with them. And that's why we say when we talk about fruit sugar or fructose, it is the sugar that's actually packaged, or the poison that's actually packaged with the antidote. And it's because all those things that are necessary to ensure it's utilized properly in the body are packaged with it. That's how nature is. So all sugar, natural or refined sugar, requires B vitamins and minerals for digestion to occur. Once again, your complex carbohydrates, your fruits, your vegetables, they have those vitamins and minerals. The refined products do not. So that being the case, the body then must draw on its reserves to complete the biochemical breakdown of sugar. So mineral levels in this country, we already recognize are depleted. The USDA reports a significant decline in minerals in our foods, anywhere from 25 to 80%. And that's largely due to the quality of the soil, over farming practices, genetic modification, and the prevalence of food processing. Another thing to think about is the deficiency of B vitamins and zinc leads to a loss of taste. Cereal manufacturers have known this for a long time. And what has happened through the years is there used to be sugar in your boxed cereals. Now, I'm not saying boxed cereals are good. Please don't get that misconception. I don't think boxed cereals are good at all. But people used to eat cereal. Cereal oftentimes was sweetened with sugar. And what happened is that sugar consumed on a daily basis, many people eating those cereals daily, would lead to a deficiency of B vitamins and zinc. And so now there was a loss of taste, which means that that cereal that used to taste so sweet and be so good just doesn't taste so good anymore. So again, cereal manufacturers recognize this. So what do? They add a little bit more sugar. And most of your cereals are going to be high fructose corn syrup, but they added a little bit more sugar. And then as the years went by, they added a little bit more sugar. And then they added a little bit more sugar. And the reason they're doing this is because people are not finding those cereals to be quite as delectable anymore, because all that sugar is actually leading to a loss of taste. Now, why does this become important? Well, I think it's important to understand that those B vitamins that are so necessary are critical for our brain function. B12, for example, is essential for building the protective myelin layers of the nerves. Also, neurotransmitter signaling, energy production, which can impact stress, mood, cognitive function, anxiety, depression, inattention disorders. Many people are, quote, B12 deficient. They go in for B12 shots. Could that be because they're consuming so much sugar? The other thing that I think about is when we talk about those things like anxiety, depression, I know that from my perspective and the study that I've done, when I look at situations like mass shootings, for example, oftentimes what we're told is the common denominator is these people were on some type of an antidepressant. These people were on some type of an antipsychotic medication, to which I say, what was it about their diet that made it be such they suffered from anxiety and depression and had to go and get a prescription for any one of these drugs? So I back it up. I don't think, okay, must have been just because they were on drugs. Why were they on the drugs to start with? B6? B6 is responsible for oxygen delivery, the production of serotonin, norepinephrine, and the conversion of glutamate. Glutamate is your alert or excitatory neurotransmitter. You have to have B6 to convert that to GABA. GABA is your calming or inhibitory neurotransmitter. So if you don't have adequate B6, you're going to have a problem with the conversion of that excitatory neurotransmitter to the calming neurotransmitter. Magnesium can activate GABA receptors, and a deficiency can actually cause neurological problems. So now we've moved from those things that we know are necessary in the vitamin category to things like minerals. So magnesium, if you don't have enough, we know can cause neurological problems. We know can also contribute to anxiety and depression, fatigue, panic attacks, headaches, chronic pain disorders, nutritional deficiencies caused by the consumption of sugars that are stealing or robbing these things from the cells. Zinc's a mineral cofactor, it's an antioxidant, it's essential to cognitive function, and deficiency in zinc can cause pica. We know that pica is that crazy eating habit. People are eating things that would not be considered normal, all right? But a deficiency of zinc can cause pica, and it can also cause infertility in men. It's linked to, again, anxiety, depression, concentration issues, and it's needed again for the function of GABA receptors. So these things are critically important in the human body, and we are causing deficiency of these things if we're consuming those sugars that are not all natural sugars. Now, what about the impact on the immune system? This is something that a lot of people don't recognize, but what we know is that the immune system is compromised by a lack of minerals, especially zinc. Studies were done back in 1973 at Loma Linda University, people who ate sugar, 100 grams of sugar, which is the equivalent of a liter bottle of soda. What they found was white blood cells are 40% less effective at killing germs when you've been consuming sugar. The consumption of sugar cripples the immune system for up to 5 hours. So glucose, fructose, sucrose, they all significantly decrease the activity of neutrophils to engulf bacteria. Neutrophils are the first responders of white blood cells when we have invading microbes. So sugar impacts white blood cells by actually competing for space in those cells with vitamin C. In the 1970s, Linus Pauling, who's considered the father of vitamin C, did research to learn how the body actually uses vitamin C. And during that time, the findings were that white blood cells need vitamin C to be able to do the job of destroying bacteria and viruses. So since sugar and vitamin C are similar in chemical structure, sugar directly competes for space in the immune cells. So the more sugar in your system, the less vitamin C can get into the white blood cells. Sugar does not help your immune system fight infection, and the result is a weakened defense from infections. They did research, and I think the research is fascinating because what they did was they actually showed how white blood cells responded to different bacteria. And what the researchers did was they surrounded the white blood cells with liquids with different concentrations of sugar. The result was the higher the sugar level in the concentration, the less the white blood cells were able to function. So there are 5 groups in the study. Group 1 consumed no sugar. Group 2 consumed 60 spoons of sugar. Group 3, that should be 6 spoons of sugar, sorry. Group 3, 12 spoons. Group 4, 18 spoons. And group 5, 24 spoons. So each group had larger amounts of sugar. What they did was after 5 hours, they drew the blood. And as the sugar consumption increased, the efficacy of the white blood cells, particularly the phagocytes, to eat up that bacteria actually decreased. White blood cells in the first group had no sugar. White blood cells in the first group were able to eat up to 14 different bacterium. Cells in the 5th group were only able to eat 1. Those cells that are so critically important, helping us to identify and remove invaders, they weren't functioning if you consume sugar. So consider this fact. Many people tend to get sick around the holidays. Is that because of increased sugar consumption? We know that sugar not only decreases the ability of the immune system to fight bacteria, but also viruses, cancer, parasites. Nancy Appleton has written an interesting book, and the name of the book is Lick the Sugar Habit. But what she says in that book is the constant immune system response eventually exhausts the body. And once the immune system becomes suppressed, the door is open to innumerable infections and degenerative diseases. High blood sugar is an immune suppressant. And sugar, again, directly inspires inflammation. Putting out the fires of inflammation distracts the immune cells from what they might otherwise be achieving in combating foreign matter. When we look at overall inflammation, we recognize that the immune system plays a critical role, certainly, in identifying and seeking out the foreign invaders. However, the immune system is also responsible for helping to maintain homeostasis in the body. And if you distract the immune system because of chronic inflammation, then your immune system is far less able to fight infection. So let's talk just a minute about GMOs, and then I will open it up for questions. GMOs, genetically modified organisms, are something that we have to consider when we talk about foods that are killing us, the foods in our diets that are killing us. Where we find the majority of genetically modified foods, field corn and corn-derived ingredients. Now, I just talked a few minutes ago about high fructose corn syrup. The majority of high fructose corn syrup in this country comes from genetically modified corn. Genetically modified corn is corn that has been developed to be able to withstand being sprayed with glyphosate. The reason the corn was genetically modified is so that when glyphosate was sprayed on the crop, it killed the weeds but didn't kill the corn. A lot of people will say to me, oh, I love corn. When I get corn, I make sure I wash it good because I know it's probably been sprayed in the fields. Washing it good isn't going to help because that field has been sprayed with glyphosate. And all the time that corn's been growing, it's been sucking up the glyphosate. So now you have the glyphosate in the corn. Now, what they want us to think is that's really okay. The human body doesn't have the pathway whereby glyphosate kills weeds. It's called the shikimate pathway. And what we know and understand is that the human body, the human cells, as a general rule, do not have that shikimate pathway. So if you consume, and this is what they tell us, if you consume glyphosate, really no big deal. The human cells don't have that shikimate pathway. However, every one of our gut bacteria does. And so this is where there's major conflict if you're eating genetically modified foods, because your bacteria necessary for the breaking down of your foods are impacted in a negative way because of the glyphosate. We'll talk more about that during another talk, but when we talk about these products that are sprayed with glyphosate and other chemicals now that are being used, they are very harmful to the human body. Soybeans and soybean-derived ingredients. Now, interestingly enough, when we talk about corn and soy, just as an aside, they're the most heavily subsidized crops in this country. So think about that for just a minute. Sugar, again, so much of what we have in terms of sugar comes from, once again, that high fructose corn syrup, and it's genetically modified. And vegetable oils or seed oils. You know, when we talk about vegetable oils, we see those containers, and the vegetable oil is described as being pure vegetable oil, and you have vegetables on the label. Vegetable oils do not come from vegetables. Vegetable oils come from seeds. They are seed oils, and they are very harmful. And they are something that we will discuss in great detail during another session. But for now, I want to go ahead and open it up to questions.
Well, that's a lot of information, folks. Did you take notes? If you're here live with us, make sure that you have that chat open because Marilyn takes great notes. You can scroll through, you can take screenshots of everything and save it in your note bank because Dr. Conaway, you always do such an amazing, thorough job at explaining things. And high fructose corn syrup is huge and what it does and the negative impact in our lives.
And it's in everything.
I love, yeah, it's in pretty much everything. Yeah. And I love how you broke down the different sugars. Because we get a lot of questions, well, why do you use fructose as a sweetener? What
Yeah.
is your response to that?
Why do we use fructose as a sweetener? Mostly because if it's fructose from a whole food source, then it's going to be prepackaged with all of those cofactors necessary to make it work in the body. And you're not going to be stealing those things from your cells.
Okay. Folks, if you need to do a replay, rewind it 20 seconds, listen to that again. That is so impactful. And I just absolutely love that response, Dr. Conaway. We do have some hands up. We have about 12 minutes, and I'm going to go right on over to Phyllis. And folks, if you are listening today, thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule, investing it into yourself, and creating more empowerment within yourself. This program is sponsored by dailywithdoc.com. My name is Becca Dukes. I am a certified holistic health coach. I'm also the director of student services for the Institute of Holistic Health and a certified naturopathic practitioner, which I am super excited, folks, that there is so much we can do as individuals to help ourselves. And you just learned about a huge one, and that's sugar, how it impacts the body, and how just making that one removal of something that is found in everything can actually benefit you. So, Phyllis, what question are you bringing into Dr. Conaway today?
Oh, I actually have several questions. But Dr. Conaway, this is quite eye-opening and a little bit horrifying. Anyway, we'll get straight to it. Aaliyah on YouTube would like to know what causes ulcers and what do you recommend for them?
Well, there are various different theories about what causes ulcers. Oftentimes, the cause is thought to be H. pylori. H. pylori is a bacteria that impacts the inside of the stomach and can actually cause deterioration of the inside of the stomach. What oftentimes will happen is when people are diagnosed with H. pylori, the doctors say, oh, it's a bacteria. We have to give you an antibiotic. And they will put people on an antibiotic, usually with some type of an antacid, to overcome the H. pylori. The problem is, as with any antibiotic therapy for anything, when you're taking an antibiotic, you're killing off the good bacteria in the gut, as well as killing off the H. pylori. So what will often happen, because the balance of bacteria in the gut is so important and dictates our health overall, if you kill off that good bacteria, what will often happen in people who take an antibiotic and an antacid for H. pylori is their symptoms may improve. They may get quite a bit better. They may think we're all good, only to help the symptoms return. And the symptoms are returning because that H. pylori is able to regrow and reestablish itself again. And it's going to do so, more importantly, because there's not enough good bacteria to fight it. So the general rule of thumb when we talk about H. pylori is not from the all-natural perspective. Do not go after it with an antibiotic and any type of an antacid medication. That is not the approach that we take. What we take as an approach is good food, bad food, reestablish a healthy gut microbiome. And as many of you know, if you listen to me, we also now talk about the oral microbiome or the mouth microbiome and how critically important that is with respect to our overall health. So that's the approach that I take. And then, of course, the 90 nutrients, that's a given. But good food, bad food, clean up the gut, make sure you're taking good care of your mouth, and make sure you're doing the 90 essential nutrients.
All right. And our next question is from Gemma on YouTube. And she has a friend with cells around the thyroid that are testing positive for cancer.
There are several different ways that we can approach that. Normally, whenever I talk to anyone who has a diagnosis of cancer of any kind, I go full bore. And what do I mean by that? Good food, bad food, balance the gut, do the gut protocol. The gut protocol, in my opinion, is so critically important because you have got to reestablish the balance of bacteria in your gut. If you don't have a healthy gut, you're not healthy from the immune perspective, cardiovascular perspective, respiratory perspective, endocrine perspective. The list goes on and on and on and on and on. Okay. So balance the gut. Make sure you're also paying attention to the mouth and correcting any mouth issues that, you know, may be problematic. And I know that that's something that sounds foreign to people because for all the years that I've been alive, right up until a few years ago when I started to study this, we were told to kill all the bacteria in the mouth. If you had bacteria in your mouth, you had bad breath. So just use antibacterial mouthwash and kill off all the bacteria. That is so wrong. When we talk about all the bacteria that's in the mouth, what we recognize is of the some 700 identified bacteria in the mouth, there are only about 14 or 15 of them that are bad or harmful. But if we're using an antibacterial mouthwash, we are disrupting the mouth microbiome the same way we disrupt the gut microbiome using an antibiotic. So you don't have the benefit of that mouth being a protector. So someone comes to me with a diagnosis of cancer, I say good food, bad food, gut protocol, make sure the mouth is healthy, the 90 essential nutrients. And then in addition to that, I always say the oxybody, and I always recommend 3 ounces a day of the oxybody. So what I recommend for people, because it must be on an empty stomach, I recommend 1.5 ounces twice a day. It must, again, be on an empty stomach, okay? I always say the ZRadical. And what I recommend is an ounce of the ZRadical every 2 hours while awake. I always say selenium, very important to increase the selenium. The beta-glucan, very important to take that beta-glucan product. And the product in the Nature's Pearl line, I call it the elixir, and it's not the elixir. I can't remember. I can never remember what it's called. But that particular product in the Nature's Pearl line, I say an ounce of that every day. And again, when I go after cancer, I want to make sure that I'm giving the body every advantage. And so do I say a lot and do I recommend a lot? The answer to that is yes. But mostly because cancer is a diagnosis that none of us want. And let's go after it as best we can.
Is that the muscadine grape?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Very important information. And one final question. Olga on YouTube, she's talking about the True Cleanse, which is part of the True to Life liver detox system. And she asks, if you're taking it separate from that whole system, can she mix it with BTT, Beyond Tangy, instead of plain water?
I would say in that case, I would say it's best to do it in plain water. And that's because what you want that particular product to do is all the things it's designed to do. And if you take a product like that with the BTT, you're kind of, it's a challenging way to say it, but you're kind of confusing both products, if you will, okay? So I always recommend that if you're going to do any type of a cleanse like that, using a specific product like that, use that product by itself in water.
Don't defeat the purpose, in other words.
Exactly.
All right, thanks. We'll move on to our next person here. Thanks so much, Dr. J.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Phyllis. Great questions. And yes, folks, those are questions that came in from YouTube. So if you're on one of the platforms where you're able to comment, we have an amazing team that are watching for those comments to bring those questions into the show to get answers for you as well. Let's go over to Zach. Zach, go ahead and unmute yourself. What question do you have for Dr. Joanne Conaway today?
Oh, Dr. Conaway, you are so refreshing.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, my God. You keep it simple, very encouraging. I'm a survivor of having gone from an 11.1 A1C to a 5.1, thanks to Dr. Wallach. But listening to him is refreshing, but hearing you, Patty was right. She said, you got to hear her. And she was right. You're good.
Oh,
Thank you. Oh, the only question that, wow, gut health, what you just talked about. What products, besides the 90 and everything you said, I heard ZRadical, and thank you for spelling it out, how to take it. Is there anything else besides the ZRadical, the Oxybody, like the Nightly Essence, or any of those, or the enzymes and the flora? Do we add those too?
Okay,
Or
Zach, those products, and I'm going to cut you off because I understand your question. It's really very simple. Okay,
yes,
those products that I just mentioned were more for cancer as a diagnosis. But when I say to people, you need to fix the gut, I have a 20-day protocol that I recommend for people. And that 20-day protocol includes the I-26, the Nightly Essence, the enzymes, the 2 different types of enzymes. And in the explanation for the gut repair protocol, you'll understand why. But yes, there are other products that are absolutely necessary, in my opinion, to be able to repair the gut. And if you would like a copy of that gut protocol, just send an email to Ask the Doctor. So spelt out, Ask the Doctor, DOCTOR, at drjconaway.com. So ask the doctor at drjconaway.com and just say protocol. If you say protocol, you're going to get all my protocols. I have, I don't know, 6 or 8 of them, but you will get the gut restoration protocol or the gut.
thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Becca. Oh, thank you, team. Great.
You're welcome.
I learned a lot today. Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. Thank
Thank
you so
you,
much.
Zach. Yes, and folks, go to DRJ Conaway, CONAWAY.com, because you're going to find one of the best books I have read in a long time. And that is by Dr. Joanne Conaway. And that's just a fantastic book. So I want to make sure, folks, that you know that you can go to her website, drjconaway.com, and get her book. And yes, she does do consultations. So you're going to find some more information out about her consultations and process there as well. And we have one more question if you have time.
I do. Let's go.
All right. Julio, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hello. Oh,
Hi.
hello. Hi. I think it's okay.
What question?
Yes, the question is very simple, Dr. Conaway. Thank you for your presentation, and hi, everybody. You talk about sugar, which, you know, for me is a very, incredible topic. It's an addiction. And my question is the following. You talked about soy, and you also talked about how sugar, affects us. So the first question is, when we ferment food, the purpose of that fermentation is just to get the sugar away. And that's why it's healthier, because it has probiotics and all that. So I think it's related with sugar. that's number one, yes or no? And the second question is related with soy. I've heard that soy, when people eat soy in the, let's say in the Eastern, the soy is not bad. Like Chinese, the Asians, they eat it because it goes through a process of fermentation to get the goitrogens out. It's something that destroys the thyroid. So my question is that due to the context where we are? So we can say that the soy here is not good, but the soy there is good. So take me into perspective. And then also when we go to, let's say, Italy, the pasta and all that is also fermented. So that's why people don't get enough weight. So take me, into the context whether that's true or not and what's going on. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. And yes, you're absolutely right. The fermentation process does change things. Okay. When we talk about consuming foods, we talk about eating foods, and we talk about enzymes acting on those foods and breaking those foods down into the molecular structures necessary to do the job at the cellular level. When you ferment foods using enzymes, a similar thing happens. And yes, you're absolutely right. Many fermented foods are much easier for the body to digest because they've already been kind of pre-processed, if you will. But talking about soy in Asia versus soy in this country, remember that the biggest problem with soy in this country is the genetic modification of soy.
Okay.
So sprayed with pesticides.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's the biggest problem. You know, people say, and there's a lot of theories around soy being so problematic because the consumption of soy interferes with estrogens in the body, for example.
Mm-hmm.
What we know is that molecularly, soy is the closest to natural estrogen as any product in the world, any crop in the world. However, people, because they have become vegan, for example, have jumped and now they are over consuming soy. And two things are happening. The overconsumption of soy is impacting hormones. But in addition to that, once again, the majority of soy in this country is genetically modified. So it becomes a double whammy, if you will.
Okay.
If you're going to consume soy, just make sure it's non-GMO soy.
Okay. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Really great question. Thank you so much, Julio, for bringing that to the show as well. Folks, you have been watching Dr. Joanne Conaway talking about sugar and is our food killing us? So summarize it for yourself, folks. From what you heard as an empowered individual, is sugar good or bad for you? And you got to also look at the types of sugar and read your labels on your food, because macaroni and cheese, high fructose corn syrup, come on, that's
and you
crazy.
know, Becky, you bring up a really good point. Excuse me for interrupting, but you bring up a really good point. Read your labels. But the other thing that I think it's important to understand is food manufacturers have recognized we don't want to see high fructose corn syrup on the label. So now what are we seeing? We're seeing corn syrup, corn solids, various different ways they are describing the same thing, but they're hiding it. They're not calling it high fructose corn syrup. They're calling it various other things. And that's where we have to be so careful. And when I do the presentation on genetically modified foods, I'm going to talk about some of the other ways high fructose corn syrup is actually on the label, and we don't realize it.
Crazy. I look forward to that. Thank you so much. We're excited to have you come back and share more of your wisdom and knowledge as you are combining both allopathic, naturopathic, and making it understandable. Thank you so much, Dr. Joanne Conaway, folks. If I could get my co-hosts to come up on the screen with us, I could not do this without them. Dr. Conaway, another great, great show. It has been so long. I absolutely love the fact that we can send you a text or send you an email. Again, that's askthedoctor@drjconaway.com. In the subject line, protocol, and you will get her amazing protocols. That's for the 20-day gut, 2 different versions, if I recall. You're also going to get the full moon cleanse. You're going to get a gut restoration for children, a parasite cleanse. It's just invaluable information that Dr. Joanne Conaway is offering to you just simply by sending her an email. And again, check out her website, get her book, and schedule a consultation. So, folks, Dr. Joanne Conaway is just a wealth of information, and we appreciate you so, so very much. And we look forward to having you back.
Well, thank you so much. Like I said, it's fun to be with you guys. So I look forward to coming back again.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And today, our co-hosts we have with us we have Sherry. She's part of our tech crew. She helps to get everything set up for the live stream. So if you're out on YouTube, Facebook, Rumble, Brighteon, Instagram, I was going to say TikTok, but I got information that we're not on TikTok today. But so many different things, LinkedIn as well, so many different places. Let us know that you're there. Sherry is part of that team that helps to get us connected to that. We also have Ruth Ellen, also part of that team, who is also my executive production manager, as she is taking the Zoom, putting it with the graphics, and that's what's being pushed out to all those different platforms. And she keeps us on task and helps us keep our guests here. So thank you so much, Ruth Ellen, for all that you do. And if you're here live with us and you have that chat open, you're enjoying the talents of Ms. Marilyn, as she does an amazing job with dictation. Thank you so much, Marilyn. And if you're in the Zoom room, it's because Mr. Albert, way down in South Africa, which I see we had several guests today from South Africa. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Yeah, he is controlling the gate. He's our gatekeeper today. So thank you so much, Albert. Folks, thank you for being you with an open mind, wanting to learn more about what you can do to help yourself, help your families, help your communities, and together we're helping the world create a better health journey. If you want some more information on how you can be a certified holistic health coach, go to coach.dailywithdoc.com and get some information about the Certified Holistic Health Coach course offered by the Institute of Holistic Health. And again, if you're not working with anybody, you've not tried any of the products mentioned in our programming, and you would like to speak with a certified holistic health coach from the Daily with Doc team, 855-949-3377. So we have lots of people saying, thank you, Dr. Joanne Conaway. Great information. Thanks, everybody, especially you. She put Joanne, and I know it's like Dr. Joanne Conaway. But lots of great comments coming in. So thank you again. We'll see you next time, everybody, here on Daily with Doc and Becca. Have a fantastic day. And yes, we will be here Thursday and Friday this week with another special guest, brand new to our show on Friday. Until next time, bye for now.
So long.
Welcome to Daily with Doc and Becca. This program is for educational purposes only. The statements in this program have not been evaluated by the FDA. The content is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any diseases, nor is it intended to take the place of your primary care physician. Testimonials are shared as individual experiences of the individual sharing their testimony. Results vary and may not be typical. We do not make any claims regarding health or income. As an empowered individual, you do have options available. We are honored to have a founding father of the science of epigenetics guiding us with the best options to obtain or maintain optimal health, Dr. Joel Wallach.